I'm Mama Sami. I'm a chicken farmer. I started this farming in 1981. We were doing chicken farmer with my husband. Now my daughter is doing it, and this is the story you hear.
Hello viewers, my name is Margaret Wanjiko Mohia.
My name is Stephen Mohia Kimani, and welcome to Mohia's Poultry Farm.
We are here in Tinganga doing poultry farming. We are rearing broilers. Rearing chicken here started back in 70s. Then my mom was rearing layers. She used to sell a lot of eggs back then. But in 1980, my dad decided to start the broilers, which is now over 40 years ago. So it's been my dad who's been taking care of them together with the workers. And still, when we were still very young, he introduced us to work. And it's been a good experience. And having to see my dad teach us how to do this and to teach us the work ethic, which has been very important for us, it's been a blessing. And to be able to still do this in his absence has been a great blessing even to the family. And just the way he introduced us to this, to layering the chicken, we've also been able to introduce our children to do the same with us. And I thank God because it's something they love to do. And we enjoy farming as a family. Usually receive the chicks when they are day-old chicks. They come when they are a day-old chick. So by the time they arrive at the farm, they've not eaten anything. So usually before they come, we prepare the brooders, the brooding places. And the critical thing about the brooding is that you need to have proper temperatures for the brooders. Usually the first day it's between 36 degrees centigrade. So usually you're supposed to make sure, and you have a thermometer that measures that temperature is right. And you avoid the fluctuation of the temperatures. During the brooding, the heating system ya brooder tunatumia jiko za makaa. Usually tunatumia ile makaa yenye wanatengeneza na udongo. They are good because they keep the heat for a long time, unlike hii makaa ingine ya miti. So we prefer ile makaa ya kutengeneza, which is what we've been using for a long time. So make sure the brooder is well prepared, the temperatures are right, and there's water, there's the feed before they arrive. So those are the preparations we do. Ukitengeneza brooder, una make sure that it is able to contain the temperatures, in that unaziba mahali, kila mahali penye joto inaweza potelea. But so the first one, day 1, day 2, day 3, you enclose them in a brooder. But on day 3, unazitolea mwanya kidogo so that they can breathe the air from outside. Then from there, you keep, usually it's supposed to be 1 square foot per bird. You do those measurements all the way until they are fully grown. You keep, from the brooding, after 14 days, you extend the brooder a bit, you open them a bit so that they can have enough space. It's very critical for them. If they grow and you're not opening to give them more space, zinaanza kukufa, and you cannot tell why unless you know that zikifinyana zinakufa. So after day 3, you open a bit, you give them more space, and then after day 14, you give them more space, and then at day 21, you give them the full space. Unaifungulia kiaga yote, sasa they become, you give them more space, they need space. The most critical things with this chicken is you have to make sure they have enough air, they have clean water, and they have enough feed. Those are the 3 critical things that you have to make sure that you're doing right. If one of them is missing or is not right, the mortality becomes high, and then it becomes a loss to the farmer. Yeah, and so after day 21, you've opened up. There are those vaccines that you do. If the company that you're working with should be able to tell you when to give a vaccine. Usually there are 3 vaccines that we do at day 6, day 12, and day 21. They are Newcastle, Guboro, and then you reinforce Guboro. Guboro we give twice, Newcastle we give once. Yeah, so if you're able to follow the instructions, most of the companies will give you instructions on how to layer the chicken. If you follow the instructions and you're doing the trainings, because most of them will call you for training, and you're following what they're telling you, you should be able to have a successful crop. Yeah, and it is actually good. It is fun to see them grow from day 1 to day 35. That at 35 days they are ready for harvest, and it is interesting to see them grow and grow well and put on the right weight. For us, our target usually is 1.7 kgs at day 35. So you work hard and you work tirelessly to make sure that you attain that weight in making sure you give the feed. You give the feed, that the ratio of feed. Usually every day there's a ratio that you give. As for example, at day 21, you're instructed to give them 5 grams of feed per bird. So then it keeps increasing until day 35, we give them at 175 grams per bird. So if you're able to follow those kind of instructions and follow them closely and you put your records well, you're supposed to have a successful crop. Yeah, so generally that is what we do. And then you make sure that they have enough feeders. You'll be able to see the kind of feeders we use. Make sure they have enough water. With feeders, the ratio is one feeder is 1:80. 1:50 birds for the feeders. The drinkers, the automatic drinkers, the ratio is 1:50. So every one drinker stands for 50 birds. If you're able to do those calculations and make sure that you have enough feeders and you have enough drinkers, you should be able to come up with a good crop. Because if you give them the less feeders and less water, then they become slow in their growth. The weight that you're expecting at day 30, maybe you find that you have not been able to achieve that weight. During brooding, sorry, I'll go back a bit. We don't use the feeders that you will see. We use trays. We use trays because they are so small, they cannot be able to reach the feeders, the big feeders. So we give trays for 14 days. So at day 27, we start introducing the feeders. At day 14, make sure that all the trays are out and they're feeding on the chicken feeders. Okay, so this is the automatic drinker. Usually it brings water automatically from the tank. The tank is elevated outside, so usually it just flows by gravity, and it comes to the drinkers. So what happens when the chicken drink the water that is here, and it's finished, more water comes. So this, when it's heavy here, there's enough water here, it closes the water that is coming from here. So usually when the water here is finished, more water will just automatically come out, and so they can keep drinking water throughout the day and at night as well. This is manual. This is a manual water drinker. This is what we use when the chicks are small, but we usually use them even when they are big, just as additional water, because the more the water, the better. So we don't keep them in the store. We still come back. We keep using them until the last day, just to have additional water for the chicken. So the more the water, the better. So these are the feeders, the ones I had said that 1:50. The ratio is 1:50. So every one of this feeds 50 birds. So make sure you have. So what happens as they grow up? As you can see, I'm raising it up. So what happens when they are small? Usually it's at this level when they are small. So as they grow up, you keep raising. It's supposed to be on the same height as the chicken back. The back of the chicken should be the same height with this feeder. That way it will be able to eat when it's standing. So if you see a chicken feeding when they are lying down or they are sitting, it means the feeder is low. You should raise it up. The same case with the automatic drinkers. You raise them as they grow and make sure they are the same height with the height of the back of the chicken. Make sure they're the same level. That way they are good level. So you keep raising them up as they grow up. they drink the water, zinamaliza, and so we have to add, you keep adding more water. And the water is finished, you keep adding, but make sure the automatic ones are working throughout. This is just additional, so usually do. So it's also important to consider giving them vitamins. If you go to an agrovet, they will be able to advise you ni vitamin gani unapatia at what time. So kuna vitamin za aina nyingi. Kuna tunapatia vitamin wakati umeipatia vaccine. After vaccine, immediately you give them vitamins for 3 to 5 days. When you introduce new feed, you know we said that you go from starter to grower to finisher. Anytime you introduce new feed, anytime you're coming from starter to grower, you give vitamins. You give a vitamin in water for 5 days. So when you're also changing from grower to finisher, you give them vitamin for another 5 days to be able to reduce the stress that will come with the new introductions of when you're introducing something new or you're feeding something new. Give them vitamins. It helps them to reduce the stress and also to make them strong enough to be able to accommodate the change that has come. So it's important to and especially after medication. Also, when you're doing medication, it's important also to do the vitamins so that they can keep as they are being medicated. They keep growing strong and they don't grow slowly because of the change that has come, because there's something new was introduced to their system. They keep growing as they take the vitamin, as they take the new feed, or as they take the medication. So the other thing you need to do is to make sure that your birds or your chicken are on the same weight. So what you do as they grow up, keep selecting out the small ones. You put them aside and feed them separately, because what happens when they are being pushed by the big ones, they're not able to eat, so the growth is very slow. So always separate the small birds and keep them aside and feed them separately. If you want to give them more vitamins, give them separately so that they can be able to catch up with the big ones. So because mwenye nguvu mpishe usually, so that is why they're not able to feed or to drink enough water, because the bigger ones are pushing them around. So put them separate and feed them separately. Then they can be able to gain the right weight. The baking part, we call it baking, but we also call it laking. Usually we use the sawdust. We use sawdust for the chicken bed. So hiyo ndio wanakalia. So what happens is ikikalia sana, it becomes kind of wet and sticky. So laking ni penye unachukua hiyo mura, the sawdust, and then you turn it upside down so that the dry one can come on top. Juu sasa kuku hawapendi kulalia ikiwa baridi. And then also because when it becomes so wet, it produces ammonia, and that ammonia affects the chicken, especially on their guts. It can affect them, and sometimes you see the mortality is going high, not knowing that you're not laking enough. So when they're young, we lake twice in a day, morning and evening. When they're big enough at about 21 days to 35, we lake once a day, early in the morning before sun comes up, because when you lake when the sun has come up, the ammonia becomes too much in the chicken shed and it affects them. So this is the baking or the raking. Why we call it the baking is because the sawdust cakes. This is the caking. We call it caking. So what you do every day, you have to turn it upside down. You turn it, you do this to make sure the one that is dry comes up. So this is what we call raking. This one we do when they're small, we do it twice. When they are big, we do it once, early in the morning. This is what we call laking. You do this every day to make sure they have a dry service. Yeah, a few challenges that we encounter with the farming is especially when you're brooding. If the challenge will be if you're away from the chicks and the temperatures are fluctuating, you are not able to tell exactly what is happening. So when you're brooding, when they are from day 1 to day 14, you have to be very close to them to be able to tell when the temperatures are fluctuating, when they have enough water, they have enough feed. Someone has to be on site all the time. And sometimes when they are too small on day 1, you find that they don't know how to. You're introducing them to drink the water. So when they are going to the drinkers to drink the water, sometimes you find them entering inside the drinker and drowning there. So before they learn how to drink the water, you have to be there, because when they drown, when they get in the water, you have to remove them and put them under the jikos for them to dry up. And otherwise, if you don't do that, you end up losing so many chicks. Well, nowadays there are ways of placing the drinkers kwa chicken shed, but what we are using right now, we have to do a very close observation on what is happening. Other challenges are like when it's at night and you have to monitor the chicken and you have to keep waking up to see how the chicks are doing. That becomes a challenge because then it has to be a sacrifice for you to make sure that you sleep late and you wake up at night to see how they're doing, and also to be able to wake up very early in the morning to see how they are in the morning. So if you do not have one challenge can be if your workers are not committed, because you need committed workers to be able to sacrifice to be in the chicken shed until late in the evening, and also to be there very early in the morning. So a challenge would come if your workers are not committed to what they are doing. It becomes a big challenge. Other challenges are like when you're using the automatic drinkers, you find due to one reason or the other, the pipes are blocked, and you didn't even realize that the pipes were blocked. So you find that the chicken don't have water for hours, and they cannot be without water even for 10 minutes. So by the time maybe you realize that the water is not flowing to the chicken shed, they're already so thirsty, and becomes a challenge now to make sure that you've given them water to be for ndio waache wasisikie, okay, like to make sure that they've drank enough water to be able to digest the food that they are eating. Yeah. Other challenges is that you cannot be able to do this farming when you're so away from the farm, because you encounter things like theft, so many cases of chicken of people stealing the feed, and like now when someone takes a whole bag of the feed, for a farmer that's a very big loss, because then that is money gone to waste. And so you have to keep you have to be in the farm, you have to be in vicinity of the farm. You cannot do the chicken farming when you're so away. The other challenge is when they grow up, you find that they are being stolen. So the security has to be very, very tight, because once they are from 30 days to 35 days, if even the chicken shed is not in a secure place, you encounter things like by the time you're selling, you find that you're missing like 200 chicken, you're missing like 300, and sometimes you can't even tell. So the other challenge is security. You have to have a very tight security for the feed and for the chicken. The other challenge is when sometimes they get attacks and they can be sick. Most of them are bacterial infections. So what happens when you see the mortality has gone, you wake up in the morning and the mortality is so high, and you feel like now this is too much, I cannot be able to lose this number of chicken per day. The best thing to do, the minute you realize that they are dying, you have to contact a veterinary, and there's some agrovets that will do a post-mortem and be able to diagnose what the problem is, and they prescribe whatever drug you're supposed to give them. So you give them the whatever drug you give them the medicine that they've asked you to give. Most of this medicine you give through water. You mix them with water and they drink it through the water. And the good thing with the chicken, once you start medicating them, after about 3 days they should be able to be settled. Even the infection goes, they respond very quickly to medication. So once you do not buy time and watch when they are dying, do a post-mortem. Most of these agrovets will do the post-mortem for free, as long as you're buying the medication from them. So it's important that once you realize something is not right, you go and get attention as quickly as possible. Because then if you ignore it and say they die like 10, like you wake up in the morning and they've died like 10, chances are tomorrow morning the number will have doubled. After 3 days, the number will have tripled. And then by the time you wake up and realize that things are not going right, you've lost so many chicken. So you have to be very, very swift in acting when something is not going on well. We are working with a company. We are contract farmers with a certain company. So when they are fully grown, and we've attained the weight that our target weight, they come and pick them as live birds. So usually we don't slaughter them here at home. They're slaughtered in the slaughterhouse, in their company slaughterhouse. Yeah, so after they've been picked up after 13 days, so what we are left is cleaning up. So you remove all the manure and dispose it. It's also, you can also sell it. Most of people buy it for their farms. And so you remove it and sweep properly, sweep the chicken shed properly, then wash it. We wash it twice. Usually when you sweep, make sure that all the sawdust is out, all the manure is out, then you clean it. So it is important to have a concrete floor, because when you have a concrete floor, you are able to wash it with water, and that way you are able to know that you've been able to clean it properly, because what you're looking for is to clean it so well and disinfect it so that the next crop that comes finds it clean and properly aerated. So usually we give it a break of 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, we are cleaning up everything that we are going to use for the next crop. We clean up everything. We clean up the curtains that we use when you're making the brooder. We clean up the trays. We clean up the feeders. We clean up all the drinkers and disinfect them. It's important to disinfect them, because if there was a problem with the previous crop and you fail to disinfect the equipment that you have, that problem could be carried forward to the next crop. So it is important to wash them properly, disinfect them, and aerate the chicken shed for 2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, we are able to make the brooder again afresh and receive new chicks. So every 2 weeks, 2 weeks is good time to be able to aerate the chicken shed and to make sure that it doesn't have any bacteria. So the disinfecting part, I want to insist, is very, very important.
Dishes.
And washing all the utensils, the equipment that you're using. So during that break, when the chicken have gone and we are preparing and we are washing up, I'm also doing other activities. I bake cakes, all kinds of cakes, all birthday cakes and wedding cakes. I'm also a caterer, and I cater for events. So you can also be able to do the farming and also do other activities on the side, so that you do not have maybe to feel that now that I have this other work that I'm doing, do I have to stop to do this because I have the farm? No, you can be able to, you're able to plan yourself properly, make sure that the chicken are taken care of properly, even in your absence. Just that make sure that you're monitoring everything that is happening in the farm. Even in your absence, you are able to tell what was happening, because you give proper instructions, you supervise, and then go to other activities. So I do not want to mean that you have to be there all the time. I'm also doing other things. I'm doing catering services to people, and all the two are going on concurrently and very well. So you can be able to do both at the same time. So make sure you have your good records, and you monitor and be committed to making those records every morning. Make a record of what is happening. If you gave any medication, make a record of the medication you give. When you did a vaccine, on which day did you do the vaccine, and which vaccine did you do, so that you're able to tell how you were able to bring up the crop. It can also give you a good picture of how to do the next one, because you can be able to tell, this is how much I spent to rear this crop, and how much do I need to rear the next crop. So the records are very, very important.
So I would urge all the guys and all the young men to venture into farming. It's a very good career, and it's also a good side hustle that you can do. May you be blessed.